welcome to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Laura Kramer. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll be bringing you some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week of coverage on Monocle Radio, with highlights from our studios here at Midori House and from around the world. This week,
we're focused on giving the Marines, the leaders, the skills to succeed, and then trust that our leadership will point us in the right direction.
we find out how the U.S. Marine Corps is getting an update. Plus, we head to northern Italy for the 15th edition of Cheese, Slow Food's biennial festival dedicated to raw milk cheeses.
So many people is attracted to be here and to celebrate with us, farmers, but I would say communities. It's not just an exposition of many, many communities. This is just one big community.
All that and much, much more over the next hour here on The Curator with me, Laura Kramer. We begin this week's show with our very own Andrew Mueller, who wraps up what we know now that we didn't 7 days ago. Here's Andrew with this week's What We Learned.
We learned this week that humanity's frankly erratic stint at running its own affairs may be drawing to a merciful close. We learned that the future of governance may sound like this.
Më lejoni t'ju kujtoj. Rreziku I vërtet për kushtetutat nuk kanë qenë kurrë makinat, por vendimet njerëzore të njerëzve me pushtet.
Which is, we learned, Diela, an entirely AI-generated apparition to whose handsome traditional Albanian costume we cannot entirely do justice in this audio medium, who has been awarded a role in Albania's cabinet, allegedly to make impartial and incorruptible decisions on procurement for public works and so on. We learned, applying our admittedly rudimentary Albanian, that what she said there was...
The real danger to constitutions has never been machines, but human decisions made by those in power.
Which, if we're honest, does sound a bit like what a megalomaniac computer program would say shortly before harvesting our blood for coolant, but we learned nevertheless that it could be worse, and indeed is.
I like to teach the world to sing with me.
For we learned of the latest steps in the ceaseless quest of US President Donald Trump to heal his divided nation.
He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent. And I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica.
And its rancorous politics.
You know, Biden was always a mean guy, but never a smart guy. You know, even you go back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, he was a stupid guy, but he was always a mean son of a bitch, you know?
And a roiling world.
I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
And but, we learned that despite the derisive sniggering emanating from some cynical quarters...
That was stupid. God, what an idiot.
Like that one, of President Trump's further placating of the dogs of war, silencing of the cries of havoc, etc. After learning last week of Trump's heroic labours to end the long, bitter and non-existent war between now apparently AI-governed Albania and, probably, Azerbaijan?
Azerbaijan and Albania, as an example. It was going on for years. It was never going to be settled.
We this week learned of another potentially destructive conflict nipped decisively in the bud by the Clemens von Metternich of our time.
Cambodia and Armenia, it was just starting and it was a bad one.
Yes. We learned that there would be no war between Cambodia and Armenia, though they must have been pretty angry with each other about something, given that their capital cities are... We'll need a spinning globe sound effect. about 6,800 kilometres apart, give or take, which, if we're quibbling, and to be clear, we are quibbling, elevates this particular diplomatic triumph to about the level of forestalling conflict between, say, Bhutan and... come on, give it another spin. Malta. Big hello to all our listeners in Malta.
Hello!
But we learned, because it's not like he is ever shy about reminding us, of how very tough life is for St. Donald the Peacebringer, who even as you listen to this monologue may well be tirelessly and diligently wrangling a cessation of hostilities between Fredonia and Legoland. For a start, as Trump explained to his fellow national leaders at the UN General Assembly during the course of a typically sane, focused, constructive, coherent, self-effacing, and above all completely normal speech, he gets none of the respect he abundantly deserves.
Which is a very big thing for which our country received no credit, never receives credit. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements.
Well, not quite everyone.
Ooh.
Stupid. Dumb.
God, what an idiot.
We learned, however, that it gets even worse than that. We learned that the escalators at the UN building don't work.
All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle.
We still have that chorus we made back when obscure UK Minister Will Quince resigned, right? That one we sometimes wheel out and get the producer to leadenly intone whatever the thing is over every mention of Will Quince. We're going to need that with the UN's escalators over every Will Quince.
No, the UN's escalators. The UN's escalators.
This changes everything.
The UN's escalators.
What are we going to do? Surely not.
We learned, however, and as always, that the president's advisors could be relied upon to help him keep things in proportion.
And if we find that these were UN staffers who were purposefully trying to literally trip up the president and the first lady of the United States, well, there better be accountability for those people, and I will personally see to it.
And that the same could be said of the president's media outriders on Fox News, ready as always to stoutly resist any temptation to report inane pettifogging trivia like it's Pearl Harbor or something.
What we need to do is either leave the UN or we need to bomb it.
We can, of course, be absolutely sure that Jesse Watters, for it was he, would be totally cool with it if a Liberal broadcaster breezily discussed their Timothy McVeigh fantasies during a news programme. We learned, however, and this will be extremely difficult to believe, but stick with us, that American conservative media had incredibly, this is all completely beyond the realm of expectation, just have never imagined, let alone heard of, anything like this happening before, run hog wild on a lurid conspiracy narrative without waiting until the facts were in. Yes, we're as shocked as you are, and so on.
The Associated Press reports that the UN understands that someone from the president's party who ran ahead of him inadvertently triggered the stop mechanism on the escalator.
We learned therefrom, however, of a possible explanation for the president's apparent distraction while up there on the literal and metaphorical world stage. He just had to walk further than he ever had in his life. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller.
Next, we turn to Monday's edition of The Globalist. The U.S. Marine Corps, long regarded as the tip of the spear in foreign combat operations, is undergoing a 10-year modernization drive aimed at getting it up to speed with traditional adversaries like China. But with Donald Trump finding new threats both at home and abroad, how is the elite force adapting? Monocle's correspondent Charlotte McDonald-Gibson observed training exercises at their Quantico military base to find out how the Marines are coping not just with the changing world, but to changing politics at home as well.
It's a blazing hot, early autumn day deep in the woods of rural Virginia, and Mounttown is eerily deserted. The basic concrete structures, a bank, police station, a shop, are empty, their windows oddly lacking glass, and there are no signs of life. That is, however, until a company of young Marines comes storming through the trees and launches an assault. gunfire cracking and smoke grenades flying as they attempt to take the town and impress their superiors, who are guiding them through basic officer training. Mounttown is one of a handful of urban warfare training facilities on Marine Corps Base Quantico, a 59,000-acre property an hour's drive from Washington, D.C. This mocked-up cityscape is a curious place, reflecting the changing priorities of the Marine Corps. It was built during the Cold War, and its structures are meant to roughly resemble a European town. But the signs above the doors are in Dari, the language of Afghanistan, a key battleground for this elite branch of the US military. These days, Mounttown is getting plenty of action as the Marines pivot for a new age of technological warfare where the urban environment plays an increasingly central role. Company Commander Captain Micah Thomas talks me through what the trainee officers are learning on the ground in Mounttown today.
The very basics of operating in the urban environment, we use what's called the urban attack cycle. So reconnaissance, understanding the terrain, understanding the buildings that we are going to, how we're going to get in, how we're going to get out, how we're going to the next building. Isolation, so how do we cut off the building that we are trying to get into from everything else?
We have another staff member here. They are going to help paint. So they help say, hey, you're taking suppressive fire, or hey, you have a casualty, you have an injury to your right leg. So if you hear that, that's what we call a paint. So that's without being able to have actual rounds, we have to explain to them what they're seeing so we can actually drive an action or a decision from that.
It's painting. We call them paints because they're painting the picture of the scenario.
Yeah. So it looks like these Marines decided that they weren't covered and concealed, so they're going to try to make entry from another way, or they're going to wait till they actually can put everything together to cross into this building right here. So the job of the people on our right is, when we decide to make entry into that big building, is where are they going to suppress and obscure with smoke to allow them to actually come out of the front in front of the enemy and make entry into their objective building. And the inevitable nature of urban combat is that there will be casualties. So when we sit about 8 people across the road, I assess that's probably too much, so that's something they can course correct. But because we sit that many people across the road with machine gun fire going back and forth, rockets, we assess casualties because they were moving across the road.
Monocle watched 300 trainee officers being put through their paces at the Basic School, a 29-week program which gives the men and women selected as Marine Corps officers the fundamental grounding to lead their troops into battle. Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Dmachowski, operations officer for the Basic School, said the program includes weapons training, martial arts, arduous hikes, land navigation and tactical planning. But now there is also training in unmanned drones, thermal sensors and masking communications, as the Marines try to keep abreast of technological change.
How do we better integrate technology, and how do we establish foundational requirements for that we want all officers in the Marine Corps to have? Because the Commandant says it every time he comes here. If you want to change the Marine Corps, it's here.
This is part of Force Design, a 10-year modernisation drive launched in 2020 to better equip the Marines to deal with the modern threat landscape, in particular the military threat from China. Force Design involves reorganisation and elimination of units such as tank battalions and a pivot to naval expeditionary warfare. It's also meant to be a technological revolution for the Marines, with a doubling of the number of unmanned aerial systems and a plan to integrate artificial intelligence into combat, logistics and planning. But what were considered threats to national security in 2020 may well have shifted today under the presidency of Donald Trump. In June, the Pentagon deployed 700 Marines to Los Angeles to assist in quelling protests, the first domestic deployment for the Marines in 33 years. The National Guard have also been deployed in some cities, raising fears that Trump is militarising the presidency. Trump has also deployed Marines to the Caribbean as he targets alleged drug running cartels out of Venezuela. It's a branding overhaul too. Trump has renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War, and Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth has vowed to reinstate warrior ethos to the armed forces. As is expected from serving military officers, the trainers at Quantico declined to be drawn into a political discussion, although Dmachowski seems a little nonplussed about the latter move.
A basic school does not need its warrior ethos restored.
But there will be an inevitable impact of the changes at the top. Hegseth is pushing for gender-neutral training, has banned transgender individuals from the armed forces, and has ordered a review of the standards for fitness and personal grooming. If Trump continues to deploy Marines domestically, There needs to be training in non-lethal crowd control and an understanding of the legal limits and rules of engagement on home terrain, where they can't, in most circumstances, make arrests or search individuals. Back out on the training field at Mountown, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Breslin, the school's warfighting director, says that while they keep across the latest developments, they try and focus on universal skills that would apply across any scenario.
What we're tasked to do here is make sure that lieutenants are able to go out and succeed no matter where they're tasked. So in any sort of threat profile, any sort of facing threat, violent extremist, whatever this situation is, our duty is to make sure we have lieutenants that are ready to lead wherever we're assigned.
Pressed on whether that includes domestic deployments, he demurs.
We're focused on giving the Marines, the leaders, the skills to succeed, and then trust that our leadership will point us in the right direction.
A report by Monocle's Charlotte McDonald Gibson there. You're with The Curator. Staying in the U.S. now, where a new documentary, The Librarians, follows the people at the center of America's book wars. After Texas lawmaker Matt Krause circulated a list of 150 titles, mostly dealing with race or LGBTQ+ subjects, librarians found themselves on the receiving end of bans, harassment, and even threats of prosecution. Once seen as community caretakers, they've become unlikely hate figures for the right and frontline defenders of democracy and the freedom to read. For Wednesday's edition of The Briefing, Georgina Godwin was joined on the line by the director Kim A. Snyder and the librarian Amanda Jones. Georgina began by asking Kim what made her want to tell this story and how she found the librarians willing to go on camera.
It started really back in the fall of 21 after this list of 850 books called the Krause List was issued in Texas. I learned about a group of librarians calling themselves the Freedom Fighters that were speaking back and organizing others. I became quickly connected with them and went to Texas, and they started to connect me with others, including Amanda.
And some of the librarians in the film became hate figures almost overnight. What did you learn about the personal toll this took on Amanda and others and why they refused to back down?
Well, honestly, the first foray into this with those original folks in Texas was shocking to me. And then it became even more shocking to learn how many librarians, the few that are featured in our film, are just a few of so many voices of librarians who have now, since we've shown the film, even come forward to say, this is exactly my story. And it's not just in Texas and Florida. We've met librarians throughout the entire country as we've traversed since our Sundance premiere in Maine and in Utah, all over the States, and actually here in UK, we're starting to hear stories.
Tell me more about what you're finding out about Britain.
Well, actually today we're going to show the film at the Bodleian at Oxford, but Amanda can speak more to it, but we're learning that there are some of these organized efforts that I think begin on our side of the pond with folks like the Moms for Liberty and those scripts, and that organization is being exported. And we're learning that it is hitting districts and libraries here. So we're actually today going to learn more because we're meeting behind closed doors with some of those librarians.
Amanda Jones, if I could just bring you in now, and if you just tell me about your role in this and how then you see this Krause list and what's happening, this bigger national or perhaps even international strategy of censorship fitting into the wider rise of extremism that's traced in the film.
Well, I'm a school librarian by trade, but I was originally targeted for speaking out against censorship in my own hometown in Louisiana for my public library. And I was, I just gave a speech at a public library and I was instantly became a target of right-wing extremists, received death threats, have been doxxed and harassed, defamed. Pretty much my entire community at one point turned against me. And I realized that it's not just me. There's thousands of us all across the United States. And the Krause list has been taken by different extremist groups and adapted all over the United States. And it has started spreading. So book banning and censorship attempts fit into the wider scheme of things because not only are they attacking books and stories, but they're attacking people. in history. And we're seeing that spread into education. It's spreading into museums and national parks even in the United States. And so it's all a concerted effort to silence voices, marginalize people that have already been, communities that have already been historically marginalized. And it's all about money and power, authoritarianism.
And finally, Kim, looking beyond the US, what do you think audiences in other countries take away from this battle?
I think that what we intended with the film was to weave a mosaic that, yes, this is happening in the United States. We are exporting this kind of extremism, but I think we want to see this, or we have seen it hitting a nerve. One of the most poignant things was after our Librarian of Congress was fired, Dr. Hayden, we immediately received an email from the German National Library saying there are hundreds of German librarians who know all too well the significance of this. So we do, as Amanda said, see this as right out of a playbook of what we've seen throughout time. That is something I would like people to take away from it, that this isn't a myopic story about culture wars in America or pronouns in the classroom. This is something much more concerning and nefarious. And indeed, these librarians without borders, if you will, are firewall.
That was Kim A. Snyder, director of the film The Librarians, and Amanda Jones, a school librarian, in conversation with Georgina Godwin earlier this week. Still to come here on The Curator, we check in on the European Tramdriver Championship, stop off in Italy for a raw milk cheese festival, and hear how, in the coming weeks, you could be sharing a business class flight with some feathered friends. Stay tuned.
We're proud to support the craft of journalism. UBS brings you the latest news from around the world. Be part of an international network that brings together leading insights, research, and technology across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs, with you at the center of it all. UBS. Banking is our craft.
You're with The Curator, our weekly highlights show here on Monocle Radio, and I'm Laura Kramer. The Urbanist this week checked in on the European Tramdriver Championship, which for the first time this year has gone international. The newly dubbed World Tramdriver Championship now invites teams from around the world to compete, and Alexei Korliov, who covered the 2023 competition for Monocle, sent us this report from the most recent edition, which took place in his home city of Vienna.
Tram driving is thrilling enough in its own right, but imagine turning it into a competition. Avid listeners may remember the excitement of the 2023 European Championships in Romania.
That's a fine kick. That is a fine kick, and all the pins are down. All the pins are down.
This time, though, it was the sport's first ever World Edition, staged in front of Vienna's Grand City Hall, and the sense of occasion was higher still.
We have an anniversary this year, 160 years of the tramway in Vienna, and therefore we thought we have to make something really special. We said to ourselves, we participated at many tram EMs, European Championships. Let's make a tram World Championship.
Elias Nadmesnik is spokesperson for Wiener Linien, the city's transport operator. Team Vienna won in 2023, and though he doesn't know it yet, they'll win again here.
We are very excited to have teams from every continent. So we have participants from South America, from Rio de Janeiro. North America, it's San Diego from the US. We have Hong Kong from the Asian continent and Australia. And from Africa, we have a team from Casablanca in Morocco. And we have a lot of European participants as well. And altogether, we are 25 teams. And every team has 2 members, 1 female and 1 male, and everyone has to drive the whole course, so they have to have a teamwork.
Let's meet some of the competitors. This is Jasper from Team Rotterdam.
Many people don't think how important it is to be a tram driver and bring other people to work, to school, to the university. hospitals.
For you today, is it more about winning or just about taking part?
It's more of taking part and have a lot of fun. Of course, I hope we win, but the most important for me is the fun.
Next up, Fadwa from Team Brussels.
It's pretty amazing. We wasn't expecting so much people here, a big crowd.
When you first heard of the idea of trying to have a competition, what was your reaction?
Oh, we were like, is it like football there is for the tramway? Yeah, we was a little bit surprised and excited to be there.
This is Khawla from Team Oran in Algeria.
It's our first participation.
Wow. So how do you feel?
Not really good. Yeah.
And how long have you been a driver?
13.
So you're very experienced.
Yeah.
So you fancy your chances. You may win tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's Craig from Melbourne.
Normally when we drive our trams down Bourke Street in Melbourne, we don't have the people yelling out our names. But this has been fantastic. It's a surreal experience and we've had a ball.
There is regrettably no head-to-head racing, either at European or world level. But these contests are still spectacular enough to pull in thousands. And not just the locals. Here's Mark cheering for Team Dublin.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm here with my partner Millie, all my friends. We've travelled to Vienna just for the Tram Fest, I think. Last year we were in Frankfurt. We travelled to the trams for that as well. And we just decided to come again this year because we had such fun last year.
Do you love trams then?
Not really. It's just I don't know why we decided to do it, but I mean we kind of like transport and like nerdy stuff. So this like fits. We're not like huge on trams. It's just nice to do something a bit weird.
In the competition, each team took on 8 challenges, including the crowd favourite, tram bowling, using the tram to roll a giant ball into inflatable pins. New this year was tram curling, where drivers had to push a trolley to a precise stop. There were also reverse driving, target braking, and a stop-and-go run. In this one, the trick was to spill as little as possible from a water container fixed to the tram's front.
Well, it's Team Paris, as you can hear. Trying not to spill the water. They did.
As the day went on, reigning European champions Budapest held the lead for a while. Then Vienna moved ahead. But in true sporting fashion, the outcome wasn't decided until the very last minute. Poland's Team Poznan looked set for victory.
Here's the joint, here's the second door. Oh, no!
But one small mistake, and it was all over for them. The winners, Vienna.
And Austria is the first champion. Congratulations.
As he celebrated, here again is Elias Natmesnik of Wiener Linien with some final words.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. We wanted to be a good host. We wanted to win as well. It was a tight race at the end. Only centimeters that are the difference between winning and getting second.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
For Monocle Radio in Vienna, I'm Alexei Korolev.
Sticking with the transport theme now for our next highlight. With the falconry season due to begin next week, Monocle's Tom Edwards was keen to find out more. For Wednesday's special edition of The Globalist, Tom was joined from Dubai by Monocle's golf correspondent Inzamam Rashid, who was surprised to find out that Tom has a keen interest in birds.
I do want to talk to you about falconry because it is deeply tied to Emirati identity, and the falcon season is beginning. It starts at the beginning of October and ends in March, and soon we are going to be seeing falcons taking business class tickets across the world because they are flying from Doha to Abu Dhabi, from Dubai to New York and to other parts to Europe as well. And falcons, as you would expect, probably have a lot of air miles already because of all the flying they do, are now actually taking chartered flights.
Now, tell me, Inzi, it is brilliant, and I'm sure our listeners have done this before, but it's well worth a quick Google of those images, because it is incredible of them all kind of lined up in their chairs, heading hooded to their next destination. But if we just interrogate a little deeper, Inzi, because the cultural role of these incredible creatures is really extraordinary, and much like with equine bloodstock, it's super high value. It's about, I don't know, but there's so many interesting sort of cultural facets that roll into this importance. Can you just tell us why it's so deeply ingrained kind of culturally in how things work there?
Yeah, it's deeply tied to the Gulf identity, particularly Emirati identity as well. Families, communities bond over the practice, and the season isn't just about sports. It's also a huge social calendar with shared hunts and gatherings, and airlines and charter firms bend to this tradition because of heritage and of wealth. Carries its weight in aviation, but falcons are serious investments. Upkeep can be thousands and thousands of dollars a month. A GPS tracker alone for one single falcon can cost you around $2,000. One bird in Riyadh sold at an auction for 1.2 million dirhams, which is around $300,000. And you can imagine a load of them in one aircraft probably costs more than the aircraft itself. And this is a cultural heritage, but it's also a thriving market. I guess what was once a Gulf pursuit is now drawing interest from buyers in Europe and in Asia, and that's what the Gulf has seen over the last few years. But this particular notion of them getting on a plane is quite interesting, because yes, those images are quite stark. You'll see a man in his white thobe and his kandura in the full Middle Eastern regalia, and a load of falcons perched on top of airplane seats covered in plastic material, because of course all the mess that they make, and you want to protect the planes. But they're also all issued with passports so they can legally travel across borders. They're seated often as well in business class, hooded, calm, sometimes even with live prey, which is all temperature controlled, so they're probably even more picky than some travelers, human travelers. And you can just see serenely this image of a raptor occupying seat 2A, and cabin crew tasked with soothing both humans and birds along their journey. It's the kind of sort of thing that sparks viral photos in Europe, those men in robes and falcons buckled up in seatbelts. I think it's fascinating, but obviously there is a huge business side to this whole venture as well.
Sure. Well, you alluded to it there with live prey, which is somewhat kind of terrifying. I was going to say, do the cabin crew get a bit of a primer on, I don't know, what kind of in-flight snacks? You know, are they kind of chicken or fish guys? Can they open those little tiny packs of airline peanuts with their talons in? I don't know how it works. What's the extra layers of attention the hapless cabin crew have to put into the proceedings?
I imagine there are a lot of rubber gloves involved, some very long tongs as well to pick up live prey and drop it in front of falcons so they can enjoy their in-flight snack. I don't know if they're going around asking whether chicken or beef is what they would prefer on the menu. And also, I don't think it varies as to what meal you get, but I'm sure they're very satisfied by the time they reach their destination.
Absolutely. Well, here's hoping. Inzi, love it. I think we need to get you on board one of those flights. Just an idea, just a suggestion. I'd listen.
In a full hazmat suit me.
Exactly, yeah.
That was Monocle's Gulf correspondent Inzamam Rashid speaking to Tom Edwards for Wednesday's episode of The Globalist. You're with The Curator, our weekly highlights show here on Monocle Radio. If you were in northern Italy last weekend, you might have smelt a pungent whiff in the air as the 15th edition of Cheese, Slow Food's biennial festival dedicated to raw milk cheeses from all over the world, took over the hill town of Bra. Slow food is an international movement created in the 1980s in protest against the growing fast food culture in Italy. Promoting good, clean, fair food and defending biodiversity and tradition, cheese has become one of the most popular events. This year, 400 exhibitors from Italy and 13 different countries brought thousands of wheels for visitors to discover, taste, and buy. Monocle contributor Danny Mitzman was there and brought us this report.
I'm in the northwest Italian Piedmont region in the city of Bra. Every 2 years, the hill town's picturesque streets and piazzas are transformed into a giant fair for cheese lovers. The 4-day event hosts cheese producers and sellers from all corners of the globe and features tasting workshops, conferences and fun activities for all ages. I've been talking to Slow Food's Francesco Sottile about the history of cheese.
We are in love with this event because the event is in Bra, where there is the headquarters of Slow Food. There is the history of Slow Food. And so many people is attracted to be here and to celebrate with us farmers and products, but I would say communities. It's not just an exposition of many communities. This is just one big community.
One of the ways Slow Food works at protecting traditional foods and production methods is by creating Presidia. Presidium status being a recognition of quality and authenticity. There are now over 100 dairy Presidia, more than any other food type, and at cheese there's an entire street dedicated to them, Via dei Presidi. That's where I found the artisanal Somerset cheddar stand.
I'm Jamie Montgomery, and we make a very traditional cheddar cheese in Somerset, the home of cheddar, and my family have been doing it since 1911. When they were looking for their first round of international non-Italian Presidia, the concept of 100 years ago there were 400 cheesemakers in Somerset making cheddar, and then we were 3. They grabbed hold of that and thought, hang on, we're going to have to do something here.
The amount of people here today swarming around your stand to taste real cheddar.
It is relentless on the stand, and it's brilliant. It's just, as soon as someone leaves, there's someone in that place. It's great, fantastic.
On the stand with Jamie is Morgan Trethowan, who's been making pitchfork cheddar since 2017.
Oh, it's been going great, and it's really, really good to be part of the Cheddar Presidio with Westcombe and Montgomery's. And I like the fact that us cheddar makers come together to work together at the event. It's interesting for us, but it's interesting for the public to try all these different cheeses that are of the same age but can taste so different.
So the ones that we've been tasting today?
They're all 15 months. We made that decision to bring the same age cheese to give people that comparison then to see how different it can be. And then it's interesting to see how cheddar is viewed by the rest of the world. So,
how is it viewed in your opinion?
Well, I mean, everybody knows it, so that's great. And people want to try it, and then we can teach them more about it.
Just a few stands along is a brand new Austrian Presidium, which Dorothea Ertel's been telling me about.
The Gailtaler Almkäse. Gailtal is the valley where we live. Alm is the mountain, Käse is cheese.
It's produced high up in the Alps by just 13 producers who each have a mountain hut where they make it on site during the summer months from the milk of around 400 cows. Local breeds which graze exclusively on the alpine grasses and flowers which give the cheese its unique flavours.
The Presidio is for us special because people now around the world, they will know us. They maybe will come sometimes to our hut, and then we have our good cheese with the good quality, and they will taste it and can taste it here at Bra, and maybe that we can get a network, and maybe we can sell the cheese to Italy or to England or to, I don't know. And we also want to show what it means to live in a mountain, to work with the cows, with the nature.
But there aren't just producers here at Cheese. There's also a whole area dedicated to those who mature it.
We're in the affinage alley, and that was a concept to bring all the affineurs together to highlight what the affineurs do as opposed to the producers or the wholesalers, but specifically those who are maturing cheeses.
Sarah Stewart's the managing director of Neal's Yard Dairy in London.
It's really great for us as affineurs to see other affineurs, and there's a lot of synergy from that. And I think for a consumer, the customer who's come to buy cheese, it's nice for them to walk by and sort of see what different things are doing. And also for us as with our trade customers, they can walk down a road and see, lots of people that they're buying from. So, yeah, it's a great place to meet a lot of people.
Sarah's been coming to cheese for over 20 years and believes Slow Food's decision to focus exclusively on raw milk cheeses was the right one.
The flavour that you get from the cheese is really incredible. You can make incredible cheese with pasteurised milk, but probably the best cheese ever will be raw milk. And there really is a threat to raw milk cheese continuing to be produced, and for Slow Food to really back that and put a sort of a line in the sand as to this is what we feel is important is super important for us. And also, taking that choice away from the individual seems very unfair. So having a festival that highlights the value of raw milk is pretty incredible.
While there are serious conferences ranging from modern-day shepherding to landscape protection to innovative uses for wool, there are also plenty of fun tasting workshops, pairing cheeses with wines and beers, or even, more bizarrely, with dates.
For example, in England, they do eat a lot of cheese with apple, so it's a fruit.
And whatever you choose to taste or do, Francesco Sottile says visitors always leave cheese with a new awareness.
You will know everything about that product because the farmers are eager to transfer the experience, to transfer the story, to transfer the cultural, to transfer the territory. So it's a different way, different approach to sell a product. And we are very proud about that because it is what we have been trying to develop for many, many years in this event, in the other events we organize. And many of us, I'm the first, we consider that this is the best event that Slow Food organizes every 2 years.
For Monocle in Bra, I'm Danny Mitzman.
And finally on today's show, Philipp Feier runs Jonas Reindel Coffee Roasters in Vienna. He opened his first specialty coffee cafe 11 years ago in a prime spot by the main university building, before branching out into other districts and starting to roast his own beans along the way. The team has grown too, drawing in people from across the globe. Now, as he prepares to open his fourth outpost in the city, Philip sat down with Monocle's Vienna correspondent Alexei Korlyov. Alexei began with the perhaps obvious question. If Philip is the founder and owner, then who is Jonas Reindel?
The reason for that is that the first cafe I opened is at Schottentor, kind of transport hub. There's a subway and tram station there. And in Viennese colloquial terms, it is also called Jonas Reindel, that location, because the mayor who had this transport hub built was Franz Jonas, and a Reindel is a cooking pan in Viennese. And if you look at this transport hub from sort of bird's eye view, it's shaped like a pan. Viennese people are pretty funny and love to give funny nicknames to things.
But I mean, you've got a very international team. Do you have to explain this to them as well, or do they not even ask this question?
They often asked, but I think often they probably did their research already in advance, and you can find that on our website. Also, before they start, they get a handbook from us, and obviously that's one of the first things in the handbook. So latest by then, they usually get the message, yeah.
My name is Mia Crony. I'm the general manager at Jonas Reindel, and I work with Philip to run the company. At the moment, we are 23 people. It's really international. Of those 23, only 4 are German or Austrian. I'm from Barbados in the Caribbean. Every day is very different for me. I usually have a couple of set barista shifts in the week. Usually one. If there are people who are sick or on holiday, then I jump in. I do a lot of learning from Philip on how to run a business, how to hire, how to look for the right people, training. And then another fun part is just making sure that everybody's happy. I do a lot of feedback talks, one-on-one talks with all of our baristi. I think it's really important. It's my first managerial job, and it's so eye-opening to be a manager in this position in a place that's so healthy.
So this is what we call coffee cupping, where we are just tasting a bunch of different coffees side by side. We do this either to find new coffees for our menu or for quality control. So we're roasting different beans in different ways, and we want to compare and see the different roast profiles or changes we make in the roasting process. So I'm going to go ahead and slurp a little.
Do it.
You don't have to slurp. It's just you can taste a little bit more.
And what happens now? So who makes the executive decision?
That would be Ben and me. Because Ben is the head roaster.
Hi, Ben.
The best trick I can say is always just drink as much coffee as you can and have the most exposure, because that's my personal opinion, the best way to enhance your palate. Because once you've drank so much coffee, you kind of know what you're looking for.
We can do two of these. It's like a chair, basically.
Yeah.
These can hold our weight.
So we are here in the storage room. We're sitting on some boxes. I don't know what's inside these boxes, but I see one open box in front of us, and it has some of your merch, right?
Yes.
The T-shirts with your logo.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that lots of businesses do, lots of businesses in the hospitality sector do. But have you done, I mean, obviously, you know, you have the roastery right there, which is quite unique.
Yeah.
But apart from that, have you done anything that you think makes you stand out?
I mean, just in terms of the merch, we try to stand out through the artwork. It's done by an artist called Peter Phobia, and it actually portrays the coffee supply chain. So there's 3 different pictures. One is of a coffee farmer, one is actually of me with the coffee roaster, and then the last one is a couple on a skateboard drinking the coffee. So it's kind of the bean to cup story. Other than that, we try to, I think, stand out actually through the interior, for instance, which I also completely design myself. I don't actually work with architects. Of course, we're not always reinventing the wheel, but I take a lot of pride in very much like hand selecting every part of every cafe. And each cafe, I should mention, is also designed individually, but there's a concept of we'll always be working with vintage chairs, and it's usually some chairs that are, I would say, collector's items almost. The first cafe, for example, has chairs by a company called ROWAG, which stands for Robert Wagner Chemnitz. Some of them well over 100 years old. They were one of the favorite chairs and stools of Walter Gropius, who was one of the founders of Bauhaus, and I don't know of any other cafe, certainly in Vienna, maybe even internationally, that has that big collection of ROWAG chairs and stools. I think we might be the only one, for instance.
All right, take us back to your beginnings. What made you decide on this career path, and what were you doing before?
I was actually doing something very different before. Straight out of school, I worked in the film industry, and I actually studied that as well. Still an interest of mine to this day, but I realized that that was not actually the right path for me. And I did grow up with hospitality. My father had a restaurant for 25 years in the first district of Vienna, and that was my whole youth, my childhood. It was being in the restaurant. And I started working in hospitality just to gain experience. So I was just working as a barkeeper for several years, and just noticed that the thing I enjoyed the most was working on the espresso machine, and just through that discovered a whole world of coffee. I just realized there's like a niche in Vienna. There was a little bit of specialty coffee here, some small cafes, but not a lot. And I just saw the opportunity to do something that was both a passion of mine and as something that I felt like was missing in the city.
So you opened 11 years ago now.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you've matured more? You've become more adult?
First, I definitely matured a lot because, when I started, I was 27 and now I'm 38. And, it was very stressful in the beginning, lots of uncertainty, lots of inexperience. And as you grow older, as you've seen every kind of scenario before, you become more relaxed, you become more able to roll with the punches, and but I could have maybe started delegating work to others faster, sooner. I became much better at that. You had the opportunity to meet some of the crucial other people in this company, such as Mia or Ben. That was huge for me to realize I can better pass on responsibility to others, which then in turn allows me to not be so spread so thin and focus on things like opening the next cafe, other projects. You have to be able to trust that other people can do as good a job as you in maintaining accuracy and consistency.
Do you ever get tired of this, of doing the media rounds and of talking, because I've had interviews where people told me, just look at the website, what can I add? It's all there. This telling and retelling your story all the time. Would you rather just crack on with it, and just do your job rather than talk about it?
I would lie if I'd say it's the favorite part of my job, but I also think, I could just be focused on my day-to-day work and there's enough to do there. But if there's not every once in a while that acknowledgement that what you're doing is appreciated in some way, the day-to-day is also harder. So I don't want to be doing this all the time, certainly not. But every once in a while, when the right people ask, it's really nice to do.
And let's conclude this interview to the sound of the bells.
Yeah.
That was Philip Fire of Jonas Rheindel Coffee Roasters speaking to Monocle's Vienna correspondent Alexei Kurlyov for this week's edition of The Entrepreneurs. Well, that's all we've got time for on this edition of The Curator. The show was produced by Sam Impey and presented by me, Laura Kramer. Join us again next week to hear some of the very best of the programs here on Monocle Radio. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.